Today we're going to run GeekBench 5 against the iPhone 12, iPhone 13, and the M1 Mac Mini. All today on the Home Tip Show. Let's do it. So over the last couple days, since producing my couple videos about the new iPhone 13, I've received a number of requests for a GeekBench comparison. So Face ID, okay. And there we go. And I have GeekBench 5 on both of my iPhones, as well as on my M1 Mac Mini. And people have asked me if I would be willing to do a comparison between the iPhone 12, which is here on the left, the iPhone 13 on the right, and then my M1 Mac Mini. And so I said, you know what? Let's do it. So let's make sure I have no apps running in the background. Nope. All right, so let's go ahead and fire up GeekBench on both of these. We're running GeekBench 5. And so GeekBench is a benchmarking tool, an industry standard benchmarking tool that is used to determine how fast something performs in comparison to something else, right? It's been on the market for 10 or 15 years. I bought licenses, everything from GeekBench 1 through GeekBench 5. So I've been using this tool literally for 15 years. It is one of the industry gold standard benchmarking tools for anything Apple related, and it runs across all platforms from iPhones to Windows machines to Macs. iPhone 12 on the left here is an iPhone 12 Pro running iOS 15. It's the Apple A15 Bionic at 2.99 gigahertz. Memory is about 5.6 gig, and we'll be looking at CPU and compute. The iPhone 13 is on the right. It does not say iPhone 13 Pro. It says like the iPhone 12 says iPhone 13, 3. All this says is iPhone 14, 2, even though this is an iPhone 13. I think it's some sort of internal Apple numbering scheme, but it's running iOS 15. Yeah, the processor is a Apple A15 Bionic, but they call it an ARM at 3.23 gigahertz. And about the same memory, and again we will be running a single core and multi-core comparison between the two. So with that, let's go ahead and let's start the benchmarks. We're going to start with the CPU, and here we go. So the CPU benchmarks are now running. Okay, so the iPhone 13 on the right is done. You can identify the 13 because the notch is a little bit smaller than on the 12. So not a huge difference between the two. I'm going to be writing these down. So we're at 1725 for the single, and 4718 for the multi. And then on the iPhone iPhone 12, we are at 1601 and 4052. So they're running 6 cores, I believe is what I read, 6 cores in both the iPhone 12 Pro and the iPhone 13 Pro. But the major improvements have been made in the graphics and the ability, because the iPhone 13 has so much better cameras in it. They needed to up the compute performance. So that's going to be the next test that we run. So we'll now back it up to get to the compute. Compute is kind of like looking at the whole thing. It's CPU plus the GPU, the graphics processing unit. GPU has become much more important over the last few years than CPU. So let's go ahead and we'll start those tests. So compute, run benchmark, compute, run benchmark. So we are running the compute benchmarks. I believe this is where the iPhone 13 on the right will hand out a lesson to the iPhone 12 Pro on the left. At least 4 or 5 hours in terms of the rest of the users. So looking at we're at 1601, 42, 12, 75, and 16, 25, and 47, 18. So not a lot of difference in CPU. Oh, but there it is. There it is. So iPhone 12 scored a 9581, and the iPhone 13 scored a 14391. So 9500 compared to 145 was at 10.5, 11.5, 12.5, 13.5, 14.5. So it beat it by about 5,000 points in terms of compute technologies. So, you know, not major differences between the two, but I understand why the compute is so much better on the iPhone 13. It's because they have much better lenses in the phone, and it has much more computational ability to do things such as cinematic video and things that we just weren't able to do in the 12 Pro. So now we're going to go ahead and make sure we have everything closed down on our Mac, on our M1 Mac Mini, and we're going to go GeekBench 5. Now remember, the processor in the Mac Mini and the new MacBooks is basically the same processor that's in the phone. They just have, better ability to turn up the speed because they can use fans. However, I never heard the fan even kick on in this thing. And just more space for heat sinking and ability. So if you look at the Mac Mini, it is from the late 2020. It's running macOS 11.6. It's the Apple M1 proprietary processor. This is not an Intel processor. This is a Apple processor. Like I said, it's basically the same processor that's in the iPhone 13, the A15, or A15 Bionic. And it is running at 3.2 gigahertz, and it has 16 gigabit of memory. Now that was one of the upgrades I made just because this is the machine that I do all my video processing on. So the first test we're going to do is going to make sure we have the Apple Silicon Mac checked, and we're going to run the CPU benchmark. So just my guesses. We'll see where we end up. Like I said, I've been using the GeekBench for years on Windows machines, and I mean, I've had computers that have scored, like some of the first iPhones that I had were like, would score 340, 550, and the fact that we're up in the 4,000s right now, I mean, that tells you. Okay, here we go. So the GeekBench score for multi-core is 1748. For single core, 1748. And the multi-core, just like I thought, 7687. So there you see it. M1 Mac Mini. From a single core perspective, not really that much difference, which tells me they're using the same chip across the 13 and the M1 Mac Mini. All they're doing is adding cores, right? If you add 2 more cores, this is the score you get. Take away 2 cores, this is the score you get. So now let's, however, look at the compute technology. This should be interesting. How do I get back there? Compute. This device. Yeah. Let me show the device. So that's a Mac Mini, M1 3.2 gigahertz. Alright, I'm going to run compute. The iPhone 13 scored a 14,563. The iPhone 12 scored a 9402. And oh wow, a 21,758. Look at that, 21,758. So it looks like we've probably got at least 2 or 3 more cores in there for video, for compute technology as well, for video technology. So I mean, really, that's all they're doing, right? I mean, they're taking the same chip, they're calling it a Bionic 15X for the iPhone 13, and they're calling it an M1 M1 chip for their computers. But it's the same chip. They're just adding cores to it. So you know, fine, that's great. I mean, these are great computers. They sip power. The power supply for this thing is like 5 watts compared to like 1,000 watts for this thing. And it's just, I think Apple's advancing the art, and if Intel isn't able to come up with some sort of solution to match them from a power requirements, kiss Intel goodbye. I mean, look at these scores. I mean, this computer this is my gaming rig, and so this computer with an Intel i7 does not score as high from a CPU perspective, but it does score about a 30,000 with its NVIDIA video card. But again, to do that is that power supply is 1,200 watts, right? The power supply for this thing is 5 watts. So what Apple has done is they've taken the miniaturization technology that they've been building out over the last 15 years, and they're now applying it to desktops, and they are going to smoke anybody who doesn't do the same. Intel, you're an American company, I love you, I want you to be around, but you need to catch up to the ARM technology You need to catch up to what they're doing in these new MacBooks and these new Mac Minis. So there you go.